Thanks for coming to the MinnesotaBlack RobeRegiment channel. I appreciate you being by. As always, I appreciate subscriptions and comments, feedback, critiques, criticisms. I appreciate all of it. So this is hopefully going to be brief, and it's going to be heavy. It's not something I wanted to cover. It's not something I wanted to address, but it's been on my mind a lot. A few months ago, at the request of some people that I interact with through an encrypted messaging service, I was asked, what's your take on the military and law enforcement in the event that things go south and we start to lose our republic, the Constitution gets, excuse the terminology, gets pissed all over? How's the military, how's law enforcement going to respond? What are they going to do? And I had made the estimate that pretty much law enforcement and military would break probably in that, and I can't remember exactly what I said, in that 65 to 75% would be on the side of the Constitution, and a good, the remaining would be pretty sold out to keeping their jobs, just following orders. And you see that pretty heavily in the senior echelons of the law enforcement world and in the military. By and large, military generals, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they're political animals. They know who they're taking orders from. They know why they're taking those orders. They know that their position is contingent upon not upsetting the powers that be. Really, the only person that can fire a sitting general is the general of the Army. And really the only person who can order that is the president or the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of the Army. So, and to get fired in the military is, there's no such thing as getting fired. You're talking about military legal action. Uniform Code of Military Justice is going to come into play. Pressure is going to be brought to bear. You're either going to submit to whatever they say, or you're going to be court-martialed and drummed out. And when you're drummed out, it's not like, oh, here you go back into the civilian life. You lose everything that you've earned. It's all gone. It's all stripped away from you. And then you go to prison. And not just, country club like Martha Stewart. You go to prison. And that's a lot for a general to lose. And that doesn't justify it. But for the most part, the generals are political creatures. News just broke of a Marine Corps commandant who basically told Nancy Pelosi off. His career is going to end very soon. Very soon. Just make no mistake about it. They will criminalize him. And it's the same thing with law enforcement leadership. When you look at chiefs of police especially, they are political appointees. They're very much political animals. They have no recourse. You do what the mayor, you do what the city council, you do what the public safety commissioner says you do, and if you don't do it, you will be forced out. And now it's not going to very often lead to legal troubles, but it is going to be, you're going to resign, and you're going to take this agreement to your resignation. And you see that oftentimes too with senior leadership within law enforcement. The one place where that doesn't always pan out exactly the same way is within the sheriffs, because the sheriffs are elected officials. Technically, constitutionally, really the most powerful person in any region is the sheriff. They're not that there's one and only one powerful person, but the sheriff is really kind of the end all and be all when it comes to law enforcement. They have powers that other people just can't imagine, but they're political too. Like, they want to stay in office. They want to stay in office. So if you get a sheriff in a very liberal bastion, say, Rochester, Minnesota, or New York City, or Los Angeles, or Minneapolis, or St. Paul, or any of that, sheriffs have to keep in mind that their voting block is leftist. They have to keep that in mind. And so they may not have to take orders from people in the sense of following the orders of somebody that hired them, but they have to keep in mind that any decision that they make that doesn't toe the leftist Marxist line is going to result in them either being recalled or voted out of office. And when you get voted out as sheriff, your career is over. There's no going back to law enforcement. Your career is over. Nobody's going to hire a sheriff that was voted out of office to come in and be a deputy again. It's not going to happen. And who's going to want to work with that person? Really? I mean, let's just be frank. That person's always going to be seen as a power person. And so sheriffs are very political as well. It's just a different type of political. Their job doesn't hang on the line every day if they refuse to follow directives of the mayor or the city council or the commissioner of public safety. So that's all understandable. And quite frankly, when the sheriff appoints a chief deputy or a lieutenant or a captain, if a police chief appoints a lieutenant or a captain, whatever the case might be, it remains political. Sure, there's a candidating process and all of that, but it's political. It's political. And the same thing goes with other levels of law enforcement, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Border Patrol, and in any other law enforcement agency that you can think of within the United States, it's there. But my hope and my trust has been that most of the people who take that oath would understand what that oath means. It's an incredibly important oath. But here's what I'm seeing. It doesn't matter to most of them anymore. A friend of mine told me about a conversation that they had with a person within their organization who flat out here in Minnesota said, you're an idiot if you don't follow the governor's orders, their law. You deserve whatever happens to you. This is a senior leadership person. This is a person that served not only in law enforcement, but as in the military as well. Yeah, and let that sink in. This person's in leadership, not upper echelons of leadership, but this person's in a leadership position, and told my friend, hey, you're an idiot if you don't follow Governor Walz's orders because it's law. Any moron who swore the oath should understand it's not law. Is it a mandate? Can it carry the force of law? Don't know. Some people would tell me I'm an idiot for saying, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you, more than likely it can't, and you're seeing that played out in a lot of other places. But here's the problem. People aren't paying attention to that anymore. All they're thinking about is job security. So let's do that again. All they're thinking about is job security, not being uncomfortable, not being unpopular, being safe, being protected. Being safe and being protected are not one and the same. And that, sadly, right now is 50 to 65% of everybody in the military and in law enforcement. And we're seeing that constantly right now. I want you to think about this. Minneapolis City employees, not in law enforcement, are being investigated by law enforcement for the mere crime of being in Washington, D.C. It's a mere crime of being in Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January. No indication that these individuals that I've heard of so far were involved in any type of nefarious activity. No indication that these individuals went there to plot an overthrow of the United States government. No indication that any of these individuals that I'm talking about were in any way, shape, or form planning terrorist acts. They're just being investigated. I've had at least two friends today two friends, as I film this, who are in Washington, D.C. One of them actively tried to stop people from breaking into the Capitol building, and that person was talked to by the FBI today and accused of plotting an overthrow of the United States government. Let that sink in. These are law enforcement officials who've taken godforsaken oath, taken an oath to defend the United States from both enemies, both foreign and domestic, and to defend the Constitution, are investigating people for merely being in Washington, D.C. Law enforcement is turning on the general public. Now, there are going to be people in Antifa and there are going to be people in Black Lives Matter out there applauding the fact that people on the right are starting to see this. Yeah, you're finally seeing it. But the problem is they're now turning in favor of law enforcement because they're seeing law enforcement for what it is. Law enforcement is swinging to the left. Law enforcement in the United States, under the leadership of senior law enforcement officers, senior law enforcement leadership, senior military leadership, or in the case of the military, they're swinging to the left. They're swinging to the Marxist side because they see if they don't, their careers are over and they're in danger. And so they're patting themselves on the back and saying, oh, look at us. We're doing what the government wants. The government is the enemy in this situation. And I know that the word's scary, but we're not meant to trust the government at every turn. It's not patriotic to listen to everything your government says without question and do it without fail. That's not patriotism. That's Marxism. That's being a sheep. And that's what's happening to our law enforcement. That's what's happening to our military. Generation after generation after generation of indoctrination in the government school systems has taught people to blindly follow the government. The government is to be trusted at all times for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that it's the government. And those are the people who are leading the military now. And those are the people who are leading in law enforcement. And it's gone to their ever-loving heads. And they're passing that on to the people that they lead. So that if anybody stands up and says, hey, wait a minute, I got a question. Sit down, shut up, and do your job, follow orders, or you're out. That's exactly what's happening across the military and across law enforcement right now. And heaven forbid you speak out, because they will come for you. Yes, there's a fine line between speaking in the context of representing law enforcement or representing the military and speaking as a private citizen. And that should be the case. I don't care where you work, you shouldn't be speaking for your employer, representing your employer. But what you have to understand is that people have been indoctrinated to believe the government is right at all times, no matter what. And if you don't toe the line, you're an enemy. And it's only going to accelerate here in the United States. So you need to be aware. If you break the law and they question you, have a lawyer present. But if you break the law, literally break the law, like if you're literally breaking a law that's been passed by the government and it doesn't violate the Constitution, you have every reasonable expectation that you should be investigated. But they're using law enforcement, they're using the military to come after people for doing nothing more than not following the orders of governors and mayors and city councils and county boards and county administrators right now. And for those sheriffs and those police chiefs who are standing up and saying, we're not going to do this, you're going to lose your jobs. Or worse, they're going to come after you. You have a very narrow window right now to stand up and follow the Constitution. A very narrow window. Like, we're talking days, people, days. And if you think this is dangerous and subversive language, I don't give a good gosh darn if you do, because this is the truth. I have talked to numerous people in law enforcement who do not recognize what's happening to their friends. They don't understand it. I have talked to person after person in the military. I'm getting out, dude. I can't. I'm getting out. And I talk to others. I won't see what the problem is. I'm just following orders. That's the Nuremberg defense. And the Nuremberg defense was the Nuremberg defense because people in the German military, I just followed orders, and millions of people were murdered by the German war machine. So no, you can't trust that the military and law enforcement is going to break on the side of the Constitution right now. Individuals, absolutely. But as a structure, as a system, absolutely not. They're going to be weaponized against patriots. They're going to be weaponized against constitutionalists. They're going to be weaponized against traditional American values. And it has nothing to do with your ethnicity. It has nothing to do with your race, color, or creed. It has everything to do with standing on the Constitution. They are going to be weaponized against you, and you have got to wrap your mind around that right now before it's too late. It's happening. It's happening right under your nose. And if you don't deal with that reality right now, you are going to be caught off guard by a sucker punch coming out of the side. When they come for you, for your views, they aren't going to come with social workers. They're not going to come with the health department. They're going to come with people with badges and guns, or people in uniform from the military with guns and zip ties. That's how they're going to come for you. Do you understand? That's what it's going to look like. And those people are going to say, hey, just following orders. Sorry. So I'm going to need you to put your hands up. I'm going to need you to turn around. You need to put your hands against the wall. We're going to pat you down. We're going to make sure you don't have anything dangerous on you. Now we're going to cart you off to the education camp. Excuse me. We're going to cart you off to a place where you can learn to adapt and be better in society. Don't think it can't happen here, people. They're already advocating for it. And the problem is most of the Marxists are cowards and they won't do it themselves, so they have to have a military or a paramilitary organization do it for them. And if you don't agree with them, they will drum you out and they will put people in who do. And that's what's happening. Sic semper tyrannis.